from North Carolina. Hi, everybody. All right. Let's see. Just wait for Tony. All right. Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. You hear me?
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I can hear you. Hi,
All
nice to
right.
meet you.
Likewise. How you doing?
Doing well. It's a nice, hot, humid 90 degrees in Maryland, so the hair out wasn't the best idea, but here we are.
There you go. Well, you
Commitments
get a
are
taste
commitments.
of our life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Definitely a hot day, but I'm excited. I've got myself a Cameroon cabinet chisel. I'm going to be smoking.
Excellent.
What are you going
Excellent.
to be? Are you having anything right now?
I'm lighting up right now with you.
Okay. So I apologize again for sending you the interview questions so late in the game.
Oh, it's all
I
right.
I figure I'd do a little bit more research, being that most of the conversations with that I've done recently have been with boutique companies. So there's a lot more different conversation pieces that are made for those specifically, as opposed to a company that like La Flor Dominicana that's been around for quite a bit of time.
Sure. You know,
So
here's the thing about LFD is that, people think that we're a lot bigger than we actually are. And that's like a common thing that I've noticed. People think we're a very big company. We're not that big, there's a lot of manufacturers out there significantly bigger than us. But we like that perception, that's kind of what we want.
right, yeah, it's definitely not something that's particularly bad to be compared with. Oh yeah, you think we're big? Cool, we'll take it.
Exactly.
But I think also it's the level of perhaps the consistency in the market, um, as well as your guys's um, catalog of what you guys have.
Sure.
It takes a good amount of infrastructure for a certain company to be able to have that many lines that are kind of, one's one way, one's a certain other way. But we'll definitely get into that. As you saw, I have a lot of questions. Um, but so what are we gonna? I'm smoking the Cameroon cabinet. What are you having?
Currently, I'm smoking. Well, this is kind of like the current love of my life when it comes to cigars. This is the Golden Bull, the one
Mm-hmm.
we've announced it recently. It's the cigar I've been making for myself for a while, but we recently decided to do a little experiment and release it as an NFT. So it's going to be end up being something very exclusive. It's interesting. It's a fun little project, and we're excited about it. We're going to see what happens.
Well, because I know you guys already have such a following with the Andalusian Bull, so working off of that is probably a good way to go. Sorry, there's people outside doing. I don't know what they're doing, but okay, we'll worry about that later.
Doing what people
Um,
do.
yeah, exactly. So, for your personal palate, where does I use this phrase Goldilocks as a way to like kind of indicate where somebody like their happy place with their cigars and their profile? What would you say yours is?
It's a tough one. I feel like my palate's always evolving, but I have like two. I have two. I like really dark, kind of chocolatey, roasted coffee. I like that end of the spectrum. Then I also love this end, like the bold. This kind of interesting combination of spices and I don't even know how to describe the flavor. Maybe kind of like an umami type deal going on, but.
Ooh.
Um, those are like my two zones that I really enjoy, and that's what I switch between. I smoke a lot of Cameroons. Cameroons, Cameroon does it for me. We
Yeah,
we really love Cameroon. Yeah.
yeah, Cameroons have always been a great staple, and you guys have always had such a good Cameroon cabinet that anytime we would get them in, they would be they would snatched up pretty easily.
Oh yeah.
Also, it's just very well constructed, and the chisel is always a fun way to go. Um, okay, yeah, because when you mean like that umami, that almost like minerally protein kind of tone.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, I love that shit.
I'm
Yeah.
not so good, honestly. I'm not so good at describing flavors. I've never been, I don't smoke a cigar and like I read a review on Aficionado or Half Wheel, and I'm like, all right, cool. You got all that stuff out of it. I don't really get any of that, but I kind of my spectrum. I simplify it. You have like pepper on one end, you have chocolate on the other, and then you have kind of nuttiness in the middle. And I place cigars somewhere along that spectrum. That's kind of how I like to see it in a much
Right.
more simplified way.
Well, and for the market, which is, there's a majority of the market that are men who do not have those heightened senses. For you to tell somebody it's got like fig and walnut and blah, 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 they're like, that's cool, but I taste one of those things you said. So now I feel like I'm missing out on something as
Sure,
opposed to holding on to that notion that everything's subjective anyway. So whatever I
sure.
taste, is going to be different. So we
Exactly.
kind of,
Everybody has a totally different experience when they smoke a
yeah,
cigar. So that's their experience, which is
right.
valid, but it's not everybody's, right?
Right. So for somebody who's learning cigars, especially like when I was learning about cigars, I found it, you I started with, well, these have these flavors and this stuff and this stuff. I'm like, but what good does that really do many people until you start looking at like how blending and the origins and the, philosophies of the blenders of certain or, countries of origin, that really can give you an idea that people can connect with because that's at least the continuity that falls through the entirety of it. Um,
Sure. I run to smokers all the time in shops, in my travels, and people that always kind of like um, they'll kind of like they'll say, oh, I like cigars, but I don't really know. I don't know about this stuff. Like I read the reviews and like I struggle. I don't taste those things, so I don't know. I'm very novice, and like there's no such thing as that. You smoke the cigar. It's your palate. You like it or you don't. And you're the expert of your palate. Nobody else is. So it doesn't matter what anybody else is saying. Do you like it? And if you do, great. And if you don't, then that's it. But there's no one overruling law on any cigar. It's totally subjective.
right. There's no seniority over it, which when you're selling to people or where you're trying to, find the right cigar for them, they have that friend who's like, well, you should smoke this really
Right.
heavy bodied cigar, even though this is your first cigar. I'm like, you might want to think about that first. Remember if you go to a restaurant with your buddy, do you guys order the same thing off of the menu?
Right.
Probably not.
Exactly.
It all is based on if you go to the library, do you pick up the same book?
Exactly.
We have people who are, look for the books, and we have the people who are like Dan Brown fans. They're like, okay, but I know everybody else likes them, so I'm just going to smoke that because
Right.
I haven't made a choice about it yet.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so I think it's interesting to, educate people first on the fact that your palate's objective, and then everything else comes after that. But you don't need to be a, big cigar nerd or be working, in blending cigars and, have your hands in the soil and stuff in order to feel that connection to it. And so I
Exactly.
guess that's why we're here today to kind of bring back that storyline to people so they feel more connected to it.
That's it.
Mm-hmm. So what when you were growing up, obviously you were around tobacco and stuff like that. So what did the growing process at a young age mean to you? Was it something that you kind of just observed? Did you feel the cultural influences of that coming? What was that like?
So LFD started as this crazy idea back in '94. This totally insane idea that my dad had didn't make any sense to do at the time. But I was like seven, I think. I was seven when all this started. So I really had no idea what was going on. My dad was always kind of an entrepreneur. He's always doing this and that, and I don't know. He was a business guy. I just always he would go on these trips and he's just going on business trips. He's doing business. I don't even know what the hell he was doing, but I didn't get it at first. I didn't really know what was going on at first, but then eventually, yeah, I got used to it, and uh, and it's funny, like every now and then, because like back then, the tobacco I associated with my father, just the smell of it, anything, it was my father. That was him, right? And every now and then, like I'll be walking around the factory or in the office, and I get a whiff of the tobacco or a cigar or something, and it'll like bring me back to being, a kid in my dad's car, and just to that moment, those smells they bring you back because he's always smoked the Cameroon number three. He's been smoking that as far back as I can remember, so
Hmm.
that cigar in particular, like that brings me back to childhood, and it's crazy how it just hits you for that split second, and so yeah, but yeah, I guess I was always around it, I would come down to the factory sometimes on summer vacations and spend some time here with my dad and check it out.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, yeah, it's cigars. There's just this massive association with my dad that I think will never disappear.
Hmm. So did you find that the connection grew for you personally, or do you find that whenever you have these thoughts about like cigars and your history with it, is it immediately tied to family, or was there something specific in the growing or like the experience of it that like is personal outside of the familial connection to it?
The moment I really fell in love with all this stuff was the moment I realized that I could contribute creatively, because that's always been my thing in life. I've always wanted to do something creative with my life. Um, and when I realized that this was like an actually a really cool outlet for all that stuff, that's when I really fell in love with it. So that's what I really love about all this. Obviously, I love cigars. I love smoking cigars. Period. I always have a cigar in my hand, and even
Mm-hmm.
my friends hate me because I won't go anywhere where I can't smoke a cigar. So it's always like we can only go here, here, here. Those are the three options, or I'm out.
Right.
But so yeah, that's my personal love for it comes from the creative aspect, from blending to packaging and everything.
Right. And it definitely shines through from the stuff that you worked with LFD, and you guys are continuing to work on. So when you, from what I listened or what I read from one interview, you started working for the business after your final year of college, right? Is that what it
I
was?
started working, yeah, like my last semester of senior year is, because I started working as a sales rep. I covered all of Florida. So like the last semester, on weekends, like I would leave on Friday, and then I'd spend Saturday and Sunday visiting shops. I'd go from like Tallahassee to Jacksonville or to Tampa or Orlando or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd visit some shops. Then I'd come back Sunday night and get back to school on Monday. But that's how I started. And then yeah, as soon as I graduated, uh, funny enough, the day that I graduated, me and all my buddies, we graduated together, and obviously, we threw a big party, and it was our last hurrah type deal.
Mm-hmm.
And that same night, I remember I had like my bags packed and everything because at like 4 in the morning, I had to jump in the shower, get changed, and hop on a flight to go to New Orleans for the trade show. It was literally the day after my graduation, so I swear I was pretty much blacked out. I got into the shower. And I just woke up when the plane landed in New Orleans, like thank God I made it.
Right.
And then it was just off to the races and after there.
So did you find anything particularly daunting? Because I mean, you're at that point, you're still, a young adult kid, you know, having to take on a lot of that responsibility. And it's a whole, it's not just the tobacco and the growing and the blending, it's the business side of it too.
Sure.
So did you find that to be initially daunting when you first started it, or did you feel like it was kind of natural?
I mean, sure, yeah, there was nothing I couldn't handle. And I never felt like I couldn't handle anything, but yeah, I mean, I was 21, I was a kid, right? And you're dealing with, adults. The cigar industry tends to be a little bit older, right? So I'm dealing with grown-ups, adults, men with families, and et cetera. And I was an English major, so I wasn't like a business major. My classes started at 12. I would sleep in,
Yeah.
so just the whole, I had 200 shops, and you have to keep track of them. You got to keep notes on them. You got to follow up. Things like that, which were new things to me.
Mm-hmm.
Again, none of it's rocket science, um, but I think like the one thing was like it's kind of like a more of like an existential thing on my part because like I'm Leto's son, right? So that people have preconceived notions of what that means, and they might have ideas of you, and it makes people think things, right? This is the owner's son. So I always made it a point to I never told anybody. Most people figured it out pretty early on, and just the word would spread. But like I never specifically told anybody. I would just introduce myself as Tony, and because yeah, I never wanted anybody to like me because I was Lito's son, you know. Yeah, I
Right.
wanted them to like me for me. And in fact, I remember there was one shop who I had a really good relationship with the owner. You know, we were really good buddies, and you know, I would just walk in whenever I wanted. I'd sit down, make myself coffee. You know, we had a really good relationship. He supported the brand, and it was like we were like I was like 3 years into being the rep, and one day I walked in, and he's like, dude, you're Lito's son?
You're like,
Like, what, you
yeah, I
didn't
got
know
this.
that? He's like, what the fuck, man? How'd you not tell me that? So I was like, cool, all right. I got at least one guy that liked me and he had no idea, you know?
Right. Well, I assume, when you're coming from, being the son of somebody having a company and, something especially like with Flor Dominicana, which is so different from other Dominican cigars, it's probably like, oh, wow, it's like the dynasty and you're, the little prince. And you're like, that's fine, but I want to
Yeah,
have my own merit and produce, good works without having that being the justification for it,
exactly.
which is a
Exactly.
much better way to go than I'm the prince of the Flor Dominicana. Bow down to
Yeah.
me,
Yeah,
right?
I'm not into that
Not
whole that
into
whole
it.
thing,
Nah,
no.
it's probably good. It's probably a good thing. So while we are speaking about that, it's the not like it's a purposeful thing, but everyone there's kind of stereotypes that placed on to different countries of origin for tobacco. Um, And what we have with like Dominican tobacco is it's always historically been, oh, smoother, milder, easy going, great starting cigar for somebody and stuff like that. To where LFD is like, well, we don't need to do that at all. We can produce something that's completely different. What about that do you find to be, what is the way that I phrased it? Where do you find that you connect still with the other blenders of your region, and where do you find that you guys are distinctly different in a way that most people don't, appreciate fully?
It's a good question. And yeah, you touched on a good topic there about, like the this perception of Dominican cigars, which, at this point it's been proven to be totally false, but it still persists. People still think that Dominican cigars are mild, and Dominican tobacco is mild. But it's got nothing to do with the soils, it just it that kind of was the culture here for a long time, right? And the old school guys, the old masters here, that those are the cigars that they liked. That's for whatever reason that became the Dominican style of cigar. But it wasn't because the soil hindered you in any way or anything like that. It was just because that's what they liked and that's what they made. So they grew tobacco for that. They fermented it for that. Everything they did was with that aim. Um, and of course, that's been proven totally false, right? Because I'll give you tobacco from my farm, and I put that up against anything in the world when it comes to strength and flavor and all that, and
Mm-hmm.
and I feel good about it. Um, so similarities and differences. I'll tell you one thing. I think Dominican Republic probably has more variety in blending and flavor styles and strength levels and all that than any other cigar making country. I think Dominican Republic has the most variety because for whatever reason, I think Dominican brands are more open to using a lot of different tobaccos from all over the world. So there's a huge variety here, and the similarities, I don't know. We might have similarities with some cigars from some companies and differences from others, but I think the cool thing about DR is that there's just a tremendous variety right now.
And that I definitely absolutely agree with. And I guess it's always trying to figure out, is there something particularly about the soil and the climate that makes some things true about a commonality between the tobaccos themselves. So from what I was reading up on, the soil type for the Dominican Republic is like alluvian or something of that nature, as opposed to volcanic or glacial soil like you have in Nicaragua and Connecticut, respectively. So for me, at
I
least when I
I'm
experienced,
sorry, I've got like a phone call and like you kind of the sound went out, so I didn't hear what you were just saying right now.
oh,
Sorry
that's
about
okay.
that.
That's okay. Um, So what I was doing just a little bit of research because, like I told you before, I have been doing a lot more talks with people from Nicaragua and Mexican San and Tuxtla Mountains and San Andreas. So where you're working with more volcanic soil. From what I was reading up, the soil type in Dominican is like alluvian or something like that. So more of like a runoff water kind of situation, which I would imagine leads to a completely kind of different experience, unlike with like
Yep.
glacial, which is far more minerally, and volcanic, which is far more sharper in its notes. So when I look at it like that, my thought process is, well, the commonality for like Dominican tobacco, to a sense, is there is a heavy balance of the notes instinctively in the tobacco itself. It's
Right.
not so much that there's minimalism, but everything has a counterweight towards it instinctively in the varietals that are produced and grown in that area. But that's just my thoughts. I don't know
Sure.
super shit.
I think it's a good way to put it.
Um, but have you? I noticed. I mean, there's also the fact that you're dealing with an island, so you're going to have much different climate. You're dealing with the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico as your two water systems that are close by, as opposed to being on like the Ring of Fire of Ecuador, being landlocked with Nicaragua and Honduras. So I mean, there's a lot of fascinating context for what makes it distinctively different, and the addition of the philosophies of the blenders who work there,
Sure.
and have had the long-standing traditions of the type of tobaccos they want to produce out of it. Um, but going back to that, is there any, when you guys, when there was a creation first of the heavier Flor Dominicana cigars, was there a first push of specializing the wrappers and like the dark oily wrappers, or was it more specialization for the Ligero tobacco that was going to be produced?
It was definitely filler. When we started farming, it was all filler. That was the focus of what we were doing. Because wrapper's a totally different animal. And again, traditionally, Dominican Republic never grew wrappers,
Right.
right? And it was just like that for whatever reason it was. Dominican growers never got into growing wrappers. It's a totally different animal. Everything from how the plants are spaced out in the ground to how they're cured and how they're fermented. It's a totally different process, right? So the knowledge just wasn't here because nobody was really doing it, And Fuente was the first one to do it. I think we were the second ones, but that came some years after. So we started growing filler at first, primarily with the idea of making more full-bodied cigars. That was kind of the goal of it. Um, and and so yeah, that was it. It was filler. Let's grow some beautiful, bold, thick, oily fillers, and up LFD cigars to the next level, right? Because at that time this was kind of still in the cigar boom and that whole era, so it was difficult to find a lot of good tobacco on the open market, especially the fuller body, the ligeros, the higher primings. It was tough to get a lot of that stuff, so it was kind of out of necessity. And I wasn't around back then, but my dad was. My dad wanted to evolve the flavor profiles of the brand,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously, and also, the goal of LFD has always been to have as much control as possible over the final product, right? So the farm was an inevitable thing that was going to have to happen. Um, so yeah, filler was first, and growing your own tobacco, it's just such a major advantage in the sense that, there's a lot of growers out there who grow awesome tobacco, on the open market, there's phenomenal tobacco from all over the world. But you have a certain advantage when you're growing it because there's certain steps that you can take that, probably growers aren't going to take, right? Growers, it's a business, right? So they're growing for weight, for quantity. Or we're not growing for quantity. We're growing for density. So we'll remove 4 to 6 leaves from the bottom of a plant, um, and we do that to all of our plants. And those 4 to 6 leaves, what happens is you remove those leaves, the nutrients that would have otherwise gone to them end up concentrating in whatever's left, right? So you get less tobacco, but you get some more serious tobacco. The strength, the flavor, everything.
Mm-hmm.
You improve that. So that's the major advantage is that you can grow for your flavor profile for what you want, and as opposed to growers, where you're kind of at the whim of what they wanted to do.
Right. Because I'd imagine there would be, after the time that you guys have worked with, um, you know, Lajero Tobacco, you guys would have created a system for a more consistent product each time you're doing it. Um, so talking about the farms, now what historically was these farms used for?
That specific piece of land was a cattle farm, I believe.
Oh,
It was cattle. They were just grazing. But that whole area, I mean, it's you got everything there. You have bananas, yucca, rice, all sorts of fruits. That's a growing region. You have everything there.
right. So I'd imagine well, anytime you're going to, I've got the archaeology background, so I'm always thinking about soil and past usage of soil because it's going to make a difference for how the layers are going to be positioned.
Sure.
Um, so would you say that there's a considerable difference of having something that is, been used for livestock versus something that's been used for mainly crop-based use in recent history from you buying it from it being, used in the past?
Sure, a hell of a lot of fertilizer.
Yeah, that's what I figured. It should be situation in a good way.
But also, I guess, it's almost kind of like virgin soil, right? Because
Hmm.
it hasn't been used to grow anything. Because, every time you grow something, every harvest, you're draining the soil and you have to replenish it, right? So that soil in particular, I guess, never really went through that process. It was pretty fresh, but it also, it could have been it could have been a yucca farm or anything else, and I don't think it would have made much of a difference. You're going to replenish those nutrients anyway. So,
Hmm.
but who knows? Maybe that was the secret, right? Maybe it was all the fertilizer in the cattle farm.
Right. Especially because, I mean, if you look historically, um, prior independence in Dominican Republic and imperialism using those lands as much as they possibly wanted to, destroying the nutrients of that,
Yeah,
there is probably a benefit to having that heavy,
sure.
steady maneuver going there because it's replenishing it. So speaking of replenishing, what do you guys typically do? Switch from one part of the farm to the next each year, and grow something in between that for the replenishment? What do you guys do?
Yeah, well, we'll usually grow soil and peanuts.
Mm.
Those are two that we use most often. The peanut oil actually, it's interesting because it gives oil to the soils, right, which transfers into the plants as elasticity, you
Mm.
know. And it's interesting. It's got a very cool effect.
Mm. Interesting. See, people don't think soil is important or interesting as cigar smokers. Like it is because it's everything that makes
It's
this this.
everything. It's everything. You'll never have a good cigar without good soil, you know.
Exactly. So talked about the farm. So as far as the factory is concerned, what tell us a little bit about the, the Flor Dominicana factory.
Our factory.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you were touching on infrastructure earlier, and it's a good point because like I was saying, we're not one of the biggest companies. We're not a massive company, but relative to our size, our infrastructure is huge,
Mm-hmm.
and that's by design. We own our own farm. We don't finance crops or anything. We own it. We operate it as well as our factory. We own it. We operate it. So there's a lot of infrastructure at LFD, especially compared to our size, and that's really the secret to quality and consistency. At least for us, it's that. But our factory, I don't know. I think it's really fucking cool. I don't know if you ever seen pictures of it or
Mm-hmm.
anything, but it's we tried to make it really pretty. We spent a lot of time here, and so we try to create a certain kind of ambiance, that we enjoy, that the employees enjoy, that visitors enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
and so we've got a whole garden, we've got a whole cooking area, we've got a pizza oven out there, we've got a grill, we've got art all over the place. We try to make it somewhere fun, somewhere aesthetically pleasing, and that's the idea, right? But the factory, it started off really small. And I always love when I give people tours of the factory, we always end up in the packaging department. And I always, stop when we get there and I tell them like, all right, so this is the packaging department. Look around, you know, when this factory started, this room was the factory, right? The entire thing was just in this one room, and then you see people like, oh shit, really? You fit all of this into here? And it's grown over time as the
Mm-hmm.
company's grown. The factory's grown with us. We always make sure to grow our infrastructure as the company grows, right? So and we've just bought a couple new pieces of land next to the factory, so we're going to be expanding a little more. It's a slow process, little by little.
Mm-hmm. But it sounds like it's a very fun atmosphere to be in, which I think is very
There's a good
important.
comment right there. Our rolling room actually used to be a nightclub. It was like supposedly the hottest nightclub here in Tamboril, and
Oh,
we
word.
still have the dance floor in the middle.
So if it's a stressful day, you just are like, give me a second. I'm going to do a little dancing to raise my spirits, right? So because you guys have been, 1994, 20, yeah, I mean, my birth year is 94. I've got your guys' thing right here.
Nice.
Um, so I mean, 28 years is a long time. So you guys have probably have, had the, like we were talking about infrastructure and stuff like that. And what comes from that is also being able to do philanthropic or charitable work within the region that you're working with. Do you guys do much of that?
Sure. I mean, that was just with our employees alone. There's always, plenty of people that we're helping all the time, right? But through Pro Cigar does a lot of philanthropic work, and we're very much a part of that. And we're also uh, in one of the new plots of land that we just purchased here. We're going to build a little school, and for our employees to send their kids to. So that's a project that we have going for in the next couple of years. Hopefully, we'll be able to launch.
Does it mean a lot to you to be able to, engage in that sort of work,
Yeah,
being that,
absolutely. I
you're
mean,
part of that?
that's cool. There's nothing that makes you feel better than helping someone out, right? It's a beautiful thing. So absolutely.
Awesome. Always good to help other people. All right. So let's see. So many questions I have on here. We talked about the hair. Okay, so the way I've always described LFD cigars to people is like you either have like, hey, do you want something really heavy to get punched in the gut, or do you want something from their line that's not as heavy, which is more like a pat on the head, like as far as the way that it's going to hit your palate and stuff like that. So is it difficult to have that kind of division between something so heavy and then something that's not, as far as a blender is concerned? Because that's two different positions to be taking.
Sure. No, listen, the trick to blending is having really good tobacco. There's really no secret to it. You have really good tobacco, it's actually not that hard to make a good cigar. Because we do we do some like organized tours. We have this retailer program. We'll bring down a retailer and they pick a group of like 5 to 10 people, and then we do like a whole week here. And one of the days we do kind of like a blending seminar. And so I give them a choice of 5 to 6 different fillers, a few different binders, a few different wrappers, and and they'll smoke. They'll smoke a little bit of each one, and then kind of take down their notes, and they create a blend.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, the blend might not be perfect, right? But all the blends are good. All the blends are
Right.
good. You have a lot of good leaves, and you mix them together. It's never bad, right? It might not be exactly what you wanted. It might not be perfect. It might not be as good as it could be, but you have good tobacco. Very easy to make a blend. So you have an idea in your head of what you want to do, and then you know obviously after time you get to know all your tobaccos, and you know what you have, and you know what their characteristics are. So you pick a starting point. All right, let's start with these. Let's give this a shot. We write down the blend, we make it, smoke it, and you take it from there. And then it's just experimenting, right? Tweak this, tweak that,
Mm-hmm.
until you land on what you want. But if you know what you want from the beginning, you kind of have an idea what you're looking for. Um, it's it isn't difficult to juggle, super full bodied with medium or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you know what you want, and you're confident in your palate. You got to be confident in the moment that you smoke it, and this is good. And say, okay, this is good. I think this is correct, and go with it.
Right. That makes sense. But would you say, well, I guess it's just, when you're working on the double Haro based cigars versus the non, there's a heavier focus on what the filler and the strength is going to be provided due to the filler versus if you're doing something more medium bodied. There's a little bit more, well, what's the wrapper going to do in comparison to strength? Where's the body going to be for that binder? I would imagine there's some, it's a different kind of math in your head, I guess, when you're blending, I would imagine, just because one's a sole focus on what the strength's going to provide, and the other one is more thinking about the continuity between how each of the binder, wrapper, and filler are going to be produced, right?
Sure. Yeah, but it's the same thing either way, and you also have to take into account burn, right? You have to take into account whether something's going to burn, because if you don't have enough Ligero in the filler, then you can't go too thick on the wrapper and the binder,
Right.
because then you'll have issues, right? So you have to find those balances to where you get the flavors you want and the proper and so that they can behave together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's another important factor that you have to look at. But again, it's I wouldn't say it's a challenge to juggle any of that, as long as you know what you want, and then you can figure it out.
So it's having that, idea in the far future, and you're like, as long as I'm continuously looking at that in mind, I'll be fine, right?
Exactly, and after time you get to know what ratios of Ligero Viso and Seco are going to give you what flavor, strength levels, and so you already know what arena you're playing in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Okay. Okay. I will say this is burning so well, and the ash is just so pretty. I love Cameron's.
there's
Uh,
nothing like Cameroon. It's
I
the perfect
know.
wrapper.
I know. It's so good. So as we were saying, so you've got that part of the line, that part of the line, and then there's been like the La Volcata and one of my favorites, and I'd love to sell the Knox cigar. So that's a definitely a branching out using Dominican tobacco as well as other countries. How was working with that? Was there a lot of fun going through and working with other country of origins tobaccos in order to make those? Because there's some of the more super interesting ones, especially the Knox. I love giving that for somebody who wants a Brazilian cigar. I'm like, here, just take it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the variety is the spice of life, right? So, I'm always excited about, if I get my hands on a new leaf, a new variety from a different country or whatever, I'm
Mm-hmm.
always super excited about trying it, and seeing if we could do anything with it. Lennox was funny because uh, Lennox was just this giant stroke of luck, right? Because usually a blend, I've had blends that they've taken 15 to 20 tries, and I've had others that have taken 50 to 60. And Lennox was, I swear to God, it was the first try, it was perfect. It just
Mm,
came out perfect, and it was just a huge stroke of luck, because that never happens, and it's not like I'm some kind of genius or anything like that, but. Lennox started off with that Brazilian wrapper, right? So we got these wrappers from a tobacco distributor, one of the local distributors that we work with, and I smoked it and I loved it. It just had this like super dark chocolate roasted coffee thing going, very different to the kind of spicy stuff that LFD is known for. And so I immediately I want to do something with this, and I want to find a blend that highlights these flavors, that brings out that flavor that these wrappers have. And so I wrote down a blend, and the guys in the rolling room made it for me, and it was just perfect. I smoked it; it
mm-hmm.
was perfect, and I never touched it again.
Right.
But that doesn't happen. It never works that way. That was just a freak incident. But it's blending is fun. It's super fun, and that's again, that's the coolest part of all this to me is creating flavors, creating images, packaging, just the creation aspect of everything is what I love. So that we're constantly experimenting here with everything, and there's always blends that, we have ready and we haven't released, and we have them here. So we've always got projects going.
Right. That's awesome. I feel it likens to, I mean, for the people who are not blenders, like the average person like me, it's almost if you're a cook or something like that and you get one really good ingredient and you're like, all right, I don't have a recipe, but I'm going to make one. You finish, you go, God damn, what did I do? I got to write that down. That was well executed. So,
It's
I mean,
exactly that.
in the same way, I mean, food is such a good way to have comparisons with cigars and stuff like that, just
Yeah.
because our palates just don't come up with these ideas of what they taste like. It comes from those past experiences and, what they
Mhm.
mean to us. So, is there any tobacco, like a certain varietal that you find to be underrated that you would like to work more with?
Huh. That's a good question. I'll tell you one that nobody ever talks about, you never really hear about, but there's some phenomenal tobacco being grown in Peru.
Thank
that
you. I've
you
been
never hear anybody talking about it, but it's really, really good and really strong. A lot of flavor, a lot of character, uh, and fantastic stuff.
I was literally saying, I was talking to my friend last night. I'm like, I hope these interview questions are going okay. I'm like, just vibe, like throwing them out. I'm like, does this sound okay? And I'm like, LFD, because they have, they've been around for a good amount of time. They've got, the infrastructure that they would probably kick ass in building something in Peru. That you mentioned that because I have a big love for Peru just because for the archaeology and the historical lessons of tobacco.
Sure,
If it all began in Peru, why not bring it back home?
sure.
But again, it comes to the infrastructure, but that kind of likens to the fact of, we've gone through revolutionary periods that moved product to then moving people and ideas. And now globalization has really allowed the mobility of people and ideas and product to be more accessible. So it just seems like we're in that next phase of developing more infrastructure in some of these countries that make really, really good tobacco. So that's
Yeah.
what I'm hopeful for. But I like that you also said Peru. I'm like, yes, somebody else, somebody else understands. um, but do you have a varietal that you specifically love working with? I know you said you like the Cameroon, but is that like one that you love working with, or you just love to smoke?
I love the smoke, but it's just awesome to work with because that's the Cameroon wrappers. You never have any problems with it. The burn is always perfect. There's never and San Andres and Brazil, the Cubra that we use from Brazil, they all burn just like a dream, you know. So there's never any kind of an issue with those. Um, but yeah, the tobaccos that we grow on our farm, so about 70% of the tobacco that we use comes from our farm. The other 30% comes from about 8 different countries, and we blend it together with ours. But the majority comes from our farm. And to me, like for example, like our piloto cubano from our farm, it to me is just the best tobacco in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm absolutely in love with that tobacco. I have been since day one, and that's something that I try to sneak some of that into every single blend that I
Right.
work with.
It's that little cup of love, right?
Yeah,
Just a
absolutely.
cup of love for the cigar, just to make sure everything's honky dory. So I know the PCA is coming up. So, and I know that all this started because I saw the new box of cigars you guys are coming out with, and I went, "Oh, that looks nice." So, would you want to talk about that?
Sure. So we have our newest project is called Solis, um, and it was kind of created as a counter to Lennox, right? So it's we have kind of the same box style, the round boxes, same packaging style, same size, totally different blend, obviously totally different look as well. And so yeah, that was kind of the idea, and the idea actually started with my little brother. He's about to turn 22. He's finishing up college, and over the last couple of years, he came down to the factory a lot, spent time with us here, and he kept saying he wanted to, he had this idea. Let's do a sun one. We got the night one, so let's do a sun one. And so we said, cool, all right, let's work on it. So every time he was here, we would all get together and kind of work on the blend and all that. Then we would work on the packaging with him since I do all of our Illustrator and Photoshop stuff and all that. So you'll sit down and throw ideas around, and so it kind of came together over the last 2 years or so. So it's an exciting one, and the reaction's been awesome so far. Everybody seems to have loved it, and the cigar itself is lovely. The flavors, everything. It's like a perfect counter to Lennox. It's very bright, whereas Lennox is very dark, and so it's cool. It was a very fun project. It was cool that me, my brother, and my dad all got to work on it together.
Mm. And that's a what Ecuadorian Habano with a Sumatra binder,
Uh-huh.
and what was the
And
filler?
the fillers are Dominican.
Oh, yeah. See, that does sound like fun. And I'm assuming, and you're, a lot more work with Ecuador in this blend.
Sure.
Um,
Hey, it's really the best country for rappers, right?
yeah,
They're just built for it. That they
that
have
that
like
cloud.
300 days of cloud cover a year. It's just perfect for rappers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, encountering the volcanic soil that you're also getting from that. It's an interesting country, Ecuador,
Yep.
isn't it, for tobaccos? And so I don't know. I feel like, do I have more questions? I mean, my personal question is, am I ever going to see a double Claro again? Because I used to love the shit out of those guys.
we still make
Do you
them.
still make them? All right. Well,
Yeah.
I'll annoy somebody at work today. Be like, can we get some more of those? Because I remember me and my coworkers, whenever they come in, I'd be like, oh crap, I need to tell my coworker. He's gonna get mad that he's like, where you didn't tell me? I'm like, I'm sorry, because they're just one of my
Yeah.
favorite candelas.
We still make them. It's just, the candelas, it's not the most popular thing, so we don't make tons of them or anything. But actually, a funny story behind that one. This all started back when I was a rep, and for some reason, just all of a sudden, I'd be visiting shops and like everybody would just be saying, "You guys should make a candela. You should make a candela." It was like a thing for some reason. I was just hearing that a lot. And so, I was with my dad one day. I was like, people keep telling me that we should make a candela. Like I keep hearing this all the time, all of a sudden. And he was like, no, I don't like candela. I don't want to do it. And I'm like, all right, whatever you want, man. I'm just saying that apparently there's a demand for it. People are interested in it. And I guess he had some time to kind of think it over. And he came out with a blend. He made a candela that he liked. That was like an LFD candela, and we released it. And then I read the Cigar Aficionado article, and he said that it was my idea. This whole thing was my idea,
You're like,
and knowing my dad, he said that because in case the cigar sucked, he could just blame it. Well, that was Tony's idea. It wasn't mine.
when in doubt, blame the sun, right? It was his idea. Oh no, but it was mine. I'm happy you guys like it. Thank you. I don't know why. I just, LSDs, I love the fact that there's so many different places you can go with them, and the consistency is always there at the same time. I remember one of the questions about blending. So you guys have your anniversary series, which is always fun because every time you have one, it's a birthday for me. So I'm like, oh, my 25th year. Oh, blah, blah, this.
There you go.
Do you find, is there a certain, um, do you guys go into those blendings knowing it's going to be for that, or do you have blends that you have in mind that you then put into those anniversary ones?
It could be either or. It could definitely be either or. You could have we got blends that we have, that are special and just kind of waiting for the right moment. But also, like the 25th anniversary, we started that one from scratch. We had an idea of the direction we wanted to go in, and we got to work with it. But yeah, for a cigar like that, it's got to be something special, right? So that's and not to say that we dedicate more time to that one than any other blend, because really we don't. But I don't know. There's got to be, and it's maybe just kind of an indescribable thing of like, okay, this one's right. This one's right for this. It
Right.
deserves. It's deserving of the occasion. So you got to find something that's deserving of the occasion.
Right. So I guess I'm not so much that there's a pressure there, but there's a thought in the back of the head that if we're going to make it this one for this particular celebration, there's got to be something that makes it correct for that moment.
Right.
Right. That makes sense.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay. Two more things, because now I'm just thinking of all the random things. The chapter one, the chapter two, the chapter two's wrapper is one of my favorite things to look at when it comes to tobacco.
It's
There's,
beautiful, huh?
oh my, every time it comes in, I'm like, hey guys, look at this. Look how beautiful it is, because there's something just amazingly gorgeous about that undertone of that red, coloration to it.
Hmm.
Is absolutely just beautiful. And then my last one is the NAS. What was the choice making the NAS cigar? The little NAS. What is it really called? What it is called?
It's called nasty as shit. You're
Okay, all right. I was just okay. I would be like, no, Kenton, that's not what it's called. I'd be like, this is really awkward. But what was the story behind that one? Just went, fuck it, let's do it.
So the NAS is a perfect example of you not having to outsmart yourself or overthink things. It's just this crudely rolled, ugly cigar. We call it nasty as shit, and people love it. So, uh, but it all started as a retailer visit to the factory many years ago, and we had just started growing this pelo de oro tobacco at the farm. So we made like one of those, crude little hand roll for them to try it, the ligero, and because it's really strong, it's really powerful, it's got a great kick to it, and they smoked it like, holy shit, this is amazing, and that's the idea started. Like, could you like just make these for us for our store, just put them in a box of 10 or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
and we could just sell them at our shop as a kind of like an exclusive thing. And so we did. We did it for them, and it was like a huge hit. And then eventually we just released it for the whole country, or for the world. And like I said, it's just a perfect example of sometimes you don't have to think too deeply into things, you know.
Right. That was always a fun
So
challenge
yeah,
cigar.
it's just pure ligero pero de oro,
Yep.
crudely rolled. Like that's how we sample tobacco. That's how we roll them up,
Hmm.
And that's it. That's all it really is.
Oh, the NAS. Oh, what fun conversations with customers. I want something really cool. Here, just take this. Have fun. Let me know how it goes. They come in from the back. They're like, "What did you do?" I'm like, "I gave you exactly what you asked for. What do you expect?" Well, I think I have ran out of questions. Hopefully, I didn't talk your ear off. I did see that there's like 4 questions in here. Have you ever smoked a LFD in Dream World? I don't know what that means. Do you know what
I
Dream
don't
World
know.
means?
I don't know what Dream World is.
All right, at least we can both be using that. What is the most complex cigar that LFD produced? Well, I know you guys have like the Mysterio lines, but that's more about construction, I would imagine.
Yeah, I assume they're talking about flavor profiles. Um, I would say probably. Uh, I would say Andalusian Bull. Um, and taking it back a little further, probably El Museo, which was that was a limited release we did in maybe 2010 or so. It's been a while, but that was a special cigar. It was an absolutely phenomenal cigar.
Mm-hmm.
I would say those two
Okay. And then someone's asking what your go-to cigar is.
right here.
And that one right there, that puppy right there. All right. Well, do you have anything else you would like to add before we hop off here?
No, just thanks to you for your time and
Yeah,
having me on and for the thoughtful questions. We appreciate it.
yeah, of course. Thank you so much. I think this was very informative for everybody. Maybe we'll check in again next time, see how the PCA went.
Perfect.
All right. Well, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.
Likewise.
All
Thanks
right.
again. Take care.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you, everybody who watched.